Okay, I'm assuming we're live. Hi, I'd like to welcome the homecoming audience, CTSA alumni and panelists. My name is Lonnie Alcaraz, and I'm a professor in the drama department. I teach lighting design and digital technology. Um, and I'm here to introduce Darcy Prevost, who was a graduate of our program in graduate scenic design in 2009. I had the joy of teaching her in a few classes while she was with us, including some digital classes, and I've had the great joy of watching her career grow over the last decade. She is a set designer, a production designer, and a model maker. A recent post that Darcy made truly made me happy because it was a picture of Stephen Colbert staring at one of her models, which he's one of my personal heroes. She's also a member of the Art Directors Guild, and she's worked on shows such as Penny Dreadful, Training Day, Gilmore Girls, and she's had a long-standing collaboration with Brian Henson of the Jim Henson Company, which will be what we'll be focusing on today with a show that she has been the production designer on, which was Earth to Ned on Disney+. Also, just last night, Darcy was nominated for an ADG Award for Excellence in Production Design. So we all want to congratulate her on that nomination. I thought it was wonderful that it came through just yesterday. Darcy's going to do a bit of a presentation. She's going to introduce the other panelists, and they'll answer some questions. And then in the last 15 minutes of the panel, we will do some question and answer where you'll be able to engage with the panelists and ask them questions through the discussion forum on the webinar. Okay, without further ado, we want to introduce Darcy Prevost.
Want me to jump right into my little presentation here. I potentially put too many slides together to show you guys a little bit about the show. We're talking about Earth to Ned, which is premiering. It's already on Disney+. We have 20 episodes up. It's really fun. For those of you who haven't had a chance to watch it, it's Ned, who's this little blue alien guy, and he is hosting a talk show here on Earth. He came to destroy it, but once he got here, he fell in love with pop culture and decided instead of destroying it, he would host a talk show. So let me show you a little bit what I'm talking about here. Can everybody see the first screen, Lonnie, you know? Okay, great. So these are just some production stills from the project. As you can see, very tall alien spaceship that we would beam guests into. Here's Taye Diggs being interviewed by Ned himself. And Brian Henson thought it would be absolutely hysterical to have the most boring, generic couch on the spaceship in contrast to the big alien spaceship set. This is our beam room where guests would be beamed and told they were about to be on an alien talk show, and they would be beamed from any activity they were doing in their lives, sometimes brushing their teeth at the dentist. Here are Ned and Cornelius, our leads, and these little guys on the right are the Claudes. They are kind of little troublemakers and became fan favorites because they're just so silly. This was from our art episode where our graphic designer, Claire, put Ned into some famous pieces of art, Ned with the pearl earring being a fan favorite. This is from my favorite episode, which was the Star Wars episode when BB-8 came rolling out onto our set, and that was a true highlight of the show for me. Here's a little bit of the design aspect. So because of the shapes, the organic shapes, I didn't feel comfortable computer drafting everything. So I started just by sculpting a 1/4-inch clay model. And on the bottom, you can see naked Ned, who did not have a costume yet, with a computer overlay onto the clay model. So this is how Brian and I figured out the actual layout of the set. Here's some sketches I did when I was first figuring things out. And I know I'm going through these quickly, but I have a lot of slides. So if you want to see anything else later at the end, let me know. Here's, again, one of our computer models where we were figuring out some of the lighting that we would have built into the set, and the full color model at the end, which is now in Brian's office. These are some of the technical drawings that our construction crew at All Sets did to figure out the engineering of this thing, because it was quite a feat. The whole thing, as you can see, is up on a 42-inch platform, and that's for the needs of the puppeteers, which you'll see here in a few pictures. This is how we translated things to the construction shop: pencil sketch, clay model, technical drawings, anything we could do to convey. And then my fellow alum, Tyler, who you'll meet here in a minute, he came in to do some of this great artwork, texture, color overlay on the drawings. This is how we figured out the color of the set, which went through probably 30 iterations of color before we picked one that Brian was happy with. Here is our finished set on the top compared to the original concept model. I think we got it pretty close. Here are just some detailed shots of the set. This is our clawed wall where they mostly hung out. Our hallway that could lead you to any new parts of the set that maybe we'll see in season 2. This is the beam room. So this is where the guests were beamed into. I picked a shot with the lights on so you could actually see the shape of it. This is from a camera test we did really early on. We were using new technology where you could track the camera to the digital scenery behind. We wanted to see how that would work with Betty, our digital puppeteer. This is the construction part. This is the fun part. These artists hand sculpted all of these sets out of styrofoam with hot wire tools. It was really incredible to watch. The first time I showed up and saw the scale of these things, I was pretty blown away. Originally, we wanted to make it taller, but the set shop only had 16-foot ceilings, so that dictated the height. Here are our scenic painters. They're laying in some initial color. I was terrified. It was all black and orange, but once they put the metallic colors on top, it really came to life. Here on the right is another UCI alum, Andreas, who was our on-set carpenter. So he was in charge of building any of the pieces that we needed throughout filming, like game show bits. This is the set being loaded into the Charlie Chaplin soundstage at the Jim Henson lot. Very big scenery pieces. Us making an adjustment to the clawed wall after it had already been installed. Just got to pick up a chisel and hack at it to give the puppeteer some more room. Andreas building a little niche for Cornelius. These are some fun pictures where Brian and I were, walking through the set once everything was loaded in to make sure the puppets would work. And here's some fun behind the scenes shots. This is what the set looked like while it was being filmed. You can see all the embedded lights could change to any color. Here's Tyler, who you'll meet in a second. And this was his first time getting mic'd up on set, which we thought was a momentous occasion, so we took a picture. And him helping me place one of our sconces that we used. And on the top, I made him be in charge of anytime we had to cover the set in slime, he got to take care of that. Another insert shot of another part of the ship. A robot chasing Brian around that our props assistant Haley Hu made. And here's the pits I was talking about. So we could lift sections of the floor out to put the puppeteers in so they could be at normal standing height to operate the puppeteers above their heads. Ned took 6 puppeteers to operate, all working together seamlessly, which is really incredible. Here's some more puppeteers standing in pits. This is for one of our restaurant gags. Lots of ooze and tentacles, having fun. I still allow myself to make a prop or 2 on set. So these are the Squug Space Undies, 8-legged underwear that I sewed, and a little miniature couch for the clods. There's Tyler just loving being on a set with all women. More blue ooze. And this is, the picture on the right shows what we deal with. Lots of puppeteer hands propping through the set. more puppeteers. And then this just shows you the amount of people it takes to put together a show. This is the whole cast and crew. So this is everyone who came together to make the show. Sorry if I breezed through that. I had so many slides. I just wanted to.
That's great. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule. So if in the discussion forum chat or in the live chat you want to ask about any of those, we could go back to some photos. But I want to put out a few questions to you, Darcy, and also to Tyler. So your relationship with Brian Henson. So you've had a long relationship with Brian Henson and the Jim Henson Company. I'm just curious how that began and how that's sort of affected or molded your career.
Well, funny enough, it actually stemmed directly from UCI. My second year of grad school, the head of our design department, Doug Goheen, was retiring. And so 5 candidates were brought in as potential new head of set design. And I went on to work with 2 of them quite a bit after I graduated, both John Yacovelli and Tom Butterwitz. And I was working on a pilot for Amazon in 2013. My phone rang and it was Brian Henson, which stunned me. And he had been calling around town looking for an assistant art director to assist the production designer on the Jim Henson Creature Shop Challenge. And I think both John and Tom had recommended me. And so he asked if I could come in for an interview. And I said I couldn't because I was still working on this Amazon pilot for 2 more weeks. And when I hung up the phone, I was very upset. And my boss asked what happened. And I was like, Brian Henson just called me. And he said, call him back. I'll find somebody to replace you. Just call him back. So I called Brian back. That was a good boss. And went in for an interview and then ended up working on the Creature Shop Challenge. And it just continued from there.
Great. This next question is for both Tyler and you being alums. What was your experience in the drama department at the Trevor School of the Arts, and how did it prepare you for working in the industry?
Well, first of all, because I didn't introduce Tyler. This is Tyler Scrivner, and he graduated, 2019? Mm-hmm. He's me minus 10. And I met Tyler at the UCLA Design Showcase West, where Lonnie, you actually introduced me and you're like, you're somebody you got to meet. And I saw Tyler's work and I was like, I have to hire this guy and then immediately not be jealous that he has my dream job right out of school. And best decision I made. He was such an asset to the team. He helped so much with all the original Photoshop renderings, the paint elevations. So that's Tyler. Now you all know.
So going back, and maybe Tyler, you can pick this up and Darcy can fill in, is how did your experience at UCI prepare you for the work that you've done since you graduated? You're muted.
Well, really a lot of what I did on Earth to Ned that I thought was fun and helpful and kind of versatile was just having a lot of Photoshop knowledge. And that was something I learned a lot through classes, through our not adjudicators, what's the word? Adjuncts. A lot of the fun adjunct classes that I had in my final year that were focused more on Photoshop, that ended up proving to be a really versatile and useful tool. So a lot of the stuff I learned in UCI about Photoshop and Vectorworks really carried over into stuff that proved to be really useful for Earth to Ned.
Great. Darcy, thoughts from 10 years earlier?
It's so funny because, we were so Vectorworks heavy, and I feel like we were like the guinea pig class for that, if I remember, Lonnie, that you taught us how to model first and draft later. And that really affected my career because now I only want to model and never want to draft. But hey, now I'm in a position where I can hire people to draft for me. Honestly, though, I always tell people when they're considering kind of film school versus theater school, I think you get a better, more well-rounded education in theater because you really have to know how to do everything yourselves. You have to do all the props charts, the paint elevations. Sometimes you have to be the painter of your own set and have to prop your own set and set decorate your own set. And so it's you learn, I think, really how to control the entire look. And I've taken that into my career for sure from UCI.
Great. This one you just kind of started to answer, and either of you can answer this. what specific advice do you have for students who are interested in getting into the entertainment industry? Maybe not so much theater, but the worlds that you guys live in.
Well, this is great because we're kind of in two different worlds now. Tyler took one toe dip into television and then ran away. So if you want to talk a little bit about what you do, Tyler, and have any.
Am I muted or am I unmuted? Great. I can't tell with this interface, but yeah, currently I am an assistant senior designer at Knott's Berry Farm. I was hired by Knott's in the last like 2.5 months of Knott's Berry, or working on Earth to Ned, and then right after Earth to Ned wrapped, I went off to work for theme park stuff. But what was the question?
What advice would you have for people to get into the areas you work in?
This is a question I knew was probably going to be posed to us, so I thought really long and hard about what the best answer for this was going to be. And what I've found, especially working on Earth to Ned, to be super important is that if you're a student and you are about to head off into the world of entertainment, being really talented and really good at your job is only half of the battle. It's only half of what you need to be. It's only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that you need to be a nice person. You need to be a nice person that is nice to work with, that people want to work with, because you're going to be stuck essentially with your crew and your team for extended periods of time in very confined spaces, and you need to be the type of person that people want to be working with in close proximity. So it's not enough to be talented. You also have to be a nice, cheerful, easygoing person who doesn't take out your frustration and anxieties on other people, especially the people who are on your team. And that is something working on Earth to Ned I learned is super important. And I knew it was going to be a really valuable skill to take from there and apply to really any other entertainment-based situation. So that was the big thing I learned on Earth to Ned that I think really should be taken elsewhere and really treated as an important thing.
Thank you. Darcy, you want to expand on this a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is wonderful because that's how I got my first job in television. Honestly, the gal who hired me on my first reality TV show, she didn't even know that I had my master's degree. She had remembered that I was interested in art department, and she said to some people, Darcy was cool to be around, right? We all liked Darcy. And she hired me, and then I just happened to be very talented and worked on many projects with them, but that's not what she asked. She didn't say who's talented, like that Darcy was talented and knew how to draft and model. She said, we all liked being around her, right? Very true. My advice would be, if you do not have a passion level for this industry that is borderline obsessive, you might not succeed at it. You don't just apply for a job and then have a job. You are constantly networking, constantly keeping up with new technology, constantly trying to find your next project while still being good at the current project you're on. It's a change, you know, like I'm on this really cool project right now and it's done in April, and then I have to find a new project. And nobody's going to help me do that. And no one is going to help me make sure I've kept in touch with old contacts in case they have a project for me. So if you are not insanely sure that you are just passionate about getting into the entertainment industry, you might want to think about what you are passionate about and go follow that instead. Because it's not easy, but it's fun.
Great. This is a little bit well, it's a similar topic. So your background, call you out a little bit. You did circus work. I know you at least juggle. I remember you coming to us with a lot of like wide variety of things, including costume work, as you're saying you sew. Tell us a little bit about that background and how that informed kind of where you have gotten to now.
Oh, that's so silly. I remember all those things. Yeah, I performed as a close-up magician all through high school and college, and I juggled and I made balloon animals because why have a normal job, right, Mom? So it's great because I'm now a member at the Magic Castle up in Hollywood, which has been a great networking opportunity. I've gotten some projects just from hanging around there and talking to people, but also like so many projects end up having a little bit of magic to them. Like how can we do this? I did Still Life at Iris, member back at UCI in whatever year that was, and we had legitimate magic tricks in the set design. And many projects still have little elements that you need to know kind of the workings of magic. So that's been a sneaky thing that's helped me out in my career.
Cool. So talking about the elephant in the room, the pandemic. So how did this last year impact both of your jobs, either of your jobs, your careers? How have you been doing through that time?
Good, Tyler.
I have been very, very, very lucky and very fortunate that my current place of employment has been able to keep me on throughout the entire pandemic. There was a brief point at which I had reduced hours, but that has since gone away. And now that things are slightly in Orange County opening up slightly just for the ability to like serve food, not to become a food serving place instead of a theme park, and they need designers to design food giving things for them. So I've been lucky in that I've remained employed throughout the pandemic.
Oh, I did not remain employed throughout the pandemic. I told Tyler it was such good timing that he ran away to kind of a more steady job right before it hit. I had just started a project at Henson that hasn't been announced yet that will premiere later this year. And it was supposed to be a 2-month project. It was not supposed to be a very long project. We were one of the first teams to get shut down. We had one of the first confirmed COVID cases of the pandemic at Henson. So everything shut down, which for what we thought was going to be a few weeks. And then it pushed, and then it pushed. They just could not figure out how to get the entertainment industry, specifically television, kind of back to filming. I kept busy, and I had a project to work on, but we just kept pushing that show, and it didn't end up getting filmed until October. So that was a push, but we're kind of back to normal, if you will, now. Normal. I mean, most people are working from home, and you have to get COVID tested 5 times a week, and then every set has different zones that people are allowed to be in. But we're allowed to work again. So I'm grateful that that's happening, but it's not easy or normal yet.
Gotcha. For the audience, I'm going to ask one more question of the panelists, and then I'm going to go out to questions through the live Q&A or the discussion forum. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in, and I'll start to get to them in a few minutes. When it comes specifically to Earth to Ned, do you have a favorite episode, favorite moments? And I also want to expand this into particular struggles in the process at all. So yeah, any sort of dirt you can give us. Let's try that.
I feel like Tyler and I remembered the exact same struggle moment at the same time. Go ahead.
Are we talking about the award show or the slime show? Okay.
The award show.
Well, Darcy, you were in the room when they asked you this big, huge ask at the 11th hour. So I'll let you give the
start with any of your favorite moments, and then we'll go into the disasters.
Well, my favorite thing about working on the show, and there's a picture in the slideshow, is working on the slime. That was a big, fun, not very stressful project that had a lot of camera time, so I was happy to work on that. There's a scene in Earth to Ned, or there's a whole episode where Betty, Siri, Alexa equivalent, shuts down, and their spaceship gets incrementally more and more disgusting and slimy and gross. And I got to make a bunch of slime for that, and there's big puddles of silicone slime that I got to mix up and make, and that's all over the set for that episode. So that was fun. It's nice to make something that millions of people get to see on Disney Plus. Even if it's just silicone puddles, but it's fun and it's nice, and that was my favorite.
I had a few favorite moments. I mean, seriously, the humans were great. We had so many great guest stars, but when BB-8 showed up on our set, I just had this moment where I was standing off in the wings and he rolled out onto the set and it just hit me. I was like, BB-8 is on something I designed and he doesn't look out of place. And I know, and I was just like, huh? Like, it was just, I'm such a nerd, as Lonnie knows. And that was a really, really fun moment. And then another one was Lisa Loeb. The day she was there, I wore my Lisa Loeb brand glasses, which she noticed, and she's like, "We have to get a selfie together because you're wearing my glasses." I thought that was very funny. But I think the moment that we all laughed the hardest, there is a fashion show done by the Claudes. And the Claudes were kind of puppeteered with hands in a glove where they could scurry across the screen. And they were practicing the fashion show. And Brian Henson was mic'd up and he was directing the puppeteers. And as they scurried, they weren't moving their legs enough. And so he was just yelling, legs, 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 and pose, and pose, and pose. And we were just dying, like the whole, because they weren't doing sound, so we could make noise. And that's one of, I think the most I laughed on that show was legs, 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 legs.
Nice. In a few minutes, do you want to share your the catastrophe moment you were talking about?
Okay, so here's what happened. It's a Friday. Anybody who's in Los Angeles knows what traffic is like on a Friday. It's another level. It could take you an hour to drive a mile. It's 3:15 p.m. on a Friday, and the producers call me to stage, which rarely happens, so I knew I was in for some special treat. And they said, so we have Darcy Carden as the guest this afternoon, and the episode is award show, and we're just wondering, shouldn't the set look a little bit more like an award show for the award show? Which happens, it filmed in 2 hours on a Friday at 3:15. And I just looked at them and I went, okay. And I turned around and I bolted back to our little art department trailer. And I mean, I told Andreas, our carpenter, I'm like, get in your van, start driving north. I'll send you directions along the way. Tyler, in your car, you're going to the trophy place. Graphic designer, go buy fabric. Like, we were making calls. We were cutting things out on our silhouette machine. Like, we were just like, holy crap. And we pulled it off. I know I personally lost at least 1 year of my life over it. Tyler, you can tell your trophy story in direct relation to that.
Right. So I'm minding my own business, doing my work like a good little PA in the art department trailer, and then Darcy comes in and she's like, "We have a code red. We need to redecorate this whole set by 5 for when they shoot the award ceremony vignette." I'm like, "Okay, well, sure. What do you need from me? You need to go to the trophy store. I need you to pick up everything that would feasibly work as an award show trophy. Like anything that vaguely resembles an award show trophy, you need to get." I'm like, "Oh, okay. I've never been to a trophy store before. I don't know what a trophy store is." But
cleared artwork trophies that you can use.
So I drive off to the trophy store, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a little store on the corner full of trophies that are free from copyright that we're allowed to use on camera. And I'm there and like, "Oh, hi, welcome to the trophy store. I can't remember the name of. How can we help you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I need one of everything." And they're like, do you have like a list? Is there anything specific your production designer is looking for? I'm like, "Nope. Not only do I need one of everything, but I'm kind of on a time limit. So can I help load stuff into my car, please? Can we go?" I'm like, "Sure." So I grabbed one of everything, and we used like pretty much everything that I even grabbed for that, didn't we? All the trophies, all the marble, just a bunch of stuff. And
No. And the button to this story is then we got the bill.
Oh yeah.
he had rented like $8,000 worth of trophies.
I printed off like this huge like CVS receipt, and I was like, "Wow, this is a receipt full of like coupons or something." Nope, it was just like the running total of like the thousands of dollars worth of cleared copyright-free trophies.
It occurred to me that I did not give him a budget in my panic, and yeah, that was a later discussion.
I'm going to move us on to a few questions. We're running a little bit behind because I messed up a little bit on time. So there's 4 questions that we have. First one was there something you did on Earth to Ned that required a skill you didn't already know how to do? And how did you work with that?
Every TV project I enter requires at least 5 new skills that I quite literally have no idea how to do. I'm currently working on a project that's all digital scenery, which I got my first taste of on Earth to Ned. We rear projected both of Betty's environments. So I 3D modeled the environment. You can't really see them on camera. They're so dark, learning curve. And then we had to get an artist who's familiar with the Unreal Engine to turn them into kind of video game environments. So that was a whole new thing, but it looks like somewhere the industry's going. So I'm happy to continue learning about that. What about you, Tyler?
The new skill I learned for Earth to Net is probably defensive driving. I'm not a big fan of driving, and I do a lot of it in order to, do the errands we needed to run and get all the shopping done we needed to get done. And driving in LA and West Hollywood is not easy, but I did it, and I learned how to be a more aggressive driver than I normally am.
Cool. I'll do this one specifically for Darcy. Your research projects for Ned, how did you get to such an organic design? And was the character Ned developed at the same time, or did he already exist?
So when I came onto the project, we were already behind and I hadn't even started yet. I basically had to conceptualize and get first drawings off in 2 weeks, which is crazy. Ned was already in development at the Jim Henson Creature Shop, which were those initial images in my slideshow where he was just naked. That's just he was sculpted out of clay. So he was this 6-foot-tall clay sculpt sitting over in the Creature Shop that I got to go see. And at that point, he didn't have a color. So I thought my set was going to be blue. And I made my set blue, and then they made Ned blue, and then my set no longer got to be blue. But in the development phase, since we had to work so quickly, Brian wasn't sure what he wanted. He's a great collaborative director, but just wasn't sure yet. So I put together a research packet of like 20 pages of very organic architecture, very structural architecture, every alien spaceship that's ever been created up till this point. Because it's not a human spaceship on an alien planet, it's an alien spaceship. And I let him look through those 20 pages, and he liked one reference image. And there was our starting point. And it had these fun sculptural columns that shot all across the space. And I was like, all right, we're going to start with a column and see where it goes. And then it just kind of grew from there. But at the beginning, it's all research images, figuring out, what your director and creators want, and then you have to go from there.
Great. Here's an interesting question. We've been talking a lot about career, but the question from Sharon Carver, how does your career impact your life? Is there any sense of balance for time for family or other things?
I'm laughing because I know Sharon Carver, and she knows that I'm an obsessive workaholic and that I have no life. Remember earlier when I said you better be very passionate about this industry before you enter it? You have to be passionate because, like Tyler said, you're going to be around people for potentially 14, 15 hours a day on projects, sometimes 6-7 days a week, depending on how it's being shot. There's not a lot of flexibility as far as you can't just kind of leave work when you're the one person who does the job you do to go watch your kids' dance recital. So we're all kind of working on that now as things are kind of progressing forward in life, and women want to have families and also work in our industry. But it's hard to have a balance. I balance it out by working obsessively on a project completely, and then I take a trip around the world for like 3 weeks before I start my next project. But there's very little balance while you're working. You kind of have to eat, sleep, and breathe the project. Tyler.
Since I was a little bit of a lower tier position in the art department as the PA, I got to go home at the day and not think about the show, and then the following day I got to come back and clock in for work, basically. So I'm sure it'd be a lot different if I was the production designer or art director, but because I was not quote unquote an essential worker for this production, I got to go home and have a regular life and then go to work the next day. That's pretty much what it's like now working at Knott's.
Great. I'm just going to one of the audience. Dawn, you asked a question that I think we've already answered, but please ask it again if you don't feel like it's been answered yet. I'm going to move on to Todd's question, which is, what might be the strengths or challenges between double majoring in English, FMS, Digifilm, and drama with respect to getting into the industry? Maybe you'll understand this question more.
It doesn't matter what you major in, honestly. If you have the skill set, I don't think anybody has ever asked to see my diploma. You know what I mean? Like, there's lots of people in the industry who started as music executives and architecture, engineering, or communications. Everybody kind of starts at the bottom as a PA. So it's more about having a necessary skill set regardless of what your major was. As long as you're good at what you want to do and meet the people who can get you that first step, I don't think it matters as much what your background is. Right?
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of people that I follow. I mean, they come from tons of different areas. People start off either as musicians or engineers or things that just are not related to the arts at all, but then they go into the arts, they find that they have a passion for it, and they get good at it and get paid for it.
This is our last question for now, but feel free to throw more in. I'm going to have a few more after this, but a question from Sarah. Is there a 3D modeling software you recommend students to learn? You have to say Vectorworks and then you can move on to others.
I still hate Vectorworks with a passion, Lonnie. I'm so sorry. But here's the thing. I was very good at Vectorworks when I left grad school, but then Vectorworks is so expensive and I graduated during a recession and I didn't have any money to buy Vectorworks. So I was told by a friend to learn SketchUp, which I then went ahead and taught myself. But once you know a modeling program, you already kind of understand how to create shapes and extrude and draw lines. SketchUp has been my bread and butter. I've also taken a Rhino class, but then didn't go any further. I just started learning Blender because apparently it works really nicely with SketchUp. So a lot of people now are taking their SketchUp models into Blender to light and texture them, and then they look really nice for presentations. So that's my next learn. But there are Art Directors Guild set designers who work in AutoCAD, Rhino, Maya, SketchUp and Layout, Vectorworks. Again, if you're good at the program you know and can deliver, if I'm hiring a set designer, I just want to make sure they can open my SketchUp models in whatever program they're using and convert those to draftings that can be built by the carpenters. So I don't ask what program they're using as long as they're good at it.
Tyler, any thoughts? And specifically now with your work with Knott's, what are you using?
I primarily use Vectorworks. It's what we used all throughout grad school, and it's what we're using at Knott's. But I'm also getting my foot in the door with Blender, and finding that Blender is solving a lot of the problems that Vectorworks can't solve, as far as some specific texturing things and some organic sculpting and modeling things. I really wish I knew more about Blender as I was going into EarthNet, because I feel like I could have been a useful, helpful asset in sort of that pre-production part with getting some maquettes and more sculptural models taken care of. But we did anyway without it, so what do I know?
Hey, clay still works.
Exactly. Like,
You know?
exactly.
A question from Frank McCrory. How early in the project are decisions made on central elements like NED, puppets, prosthetics, motion capture, CGI? And then I'll ask the second half in just a moment.
Almost immediately for broad strokes. Like when I come in for a meeting, my first questions are about how we're filming it. So those decisions have to be made pretty early on. Like I said, when I came on, I was one of the first handful of people on the project, but the creatures were already being developed. And from there, we were able to develop the set. And you have to go broad strokes in. So you have to figure out kind of broad stroke what it's going to be. And then you can get into the nitty gritty of how the design elements actually look and are going to get built and finished and textured. You can't do it all at once. You would lose your mind. So, but broad strokes are figured out very, very quickly in the entertainment industry.
The second part of this says, did it start off as we have a great idea to showcase this puppet, or a puppet is a perfect way to do this idea? So where did the puppet factor
Well,
in?
since it's through Henson and they specialize in puppetry, I mean, they at any time are pitching 10 ideas, is my guess, behind the scenes. So I think this was just an idea of, it's a alien talk show where, you know, and how we don't know any real aliens, so it had to be a puppet. But I think it was just a broad, this would be funny, somebody not from our planet coming and interviewing humans. So how can we do that? It's through a puppet.
You early on, you had you showed a picture of you re-sculpting a piece, and you also talked about scale and that picture of you with scale with everything else. How much does it change once it's kind of built? Like, you get in there, can you make those, and then do you have to do like as-built drawings later to document the show?
Yeah, that's a good question. The as-built things. I have been on very few projects that had the luxury of kind of going back and editing the drawings to make them as-built. Usually on a project that lasts long and has enough money for, like on Mindhunter, for instance, we had 3 set designers and 20 people in the art department. So we had like months of prep time, which was such a luxury. So we didn't have to worry about it, because by the time it got to the build stage, our drawings were all accurate. For Ned, there was a lot of, I mean, if you look at my initial sculpt versus the final thing, it's all still there. Initially, it's just the shape of it. It's all kind of goopy. I thought it was going to be a lot more organic, and we cleaned it up a lot. But the shape was there from the initial sculpt. So it's just kind of like you chisel away at the broad stroke idea and just clean it up with each pass. But the set shop, they had to do their own technical drawings of how they were actually going to build it from our set design drawings. So I would say that their technical drawings were pretty accurate by the time they installed on Ned, because they were figuring out engineering as we sent them drawings.
Great. What are your thoughts on internships? Should starting out you do free internships, unpaid internships, low paid internships? What are your thoughts on that? Did you do them?
I still work for free. I'm such a theater kid. It's tricky. I think you should do it in moderation. Like, I had hired, I even came back to UCI to hire some students to assist me on like a small film years ago. But even then, I was still giving them a PA rate. I never hire anybody for free. The low rate, the starting low rate is low, but it's still compensation. You can volunteer your time on like student films to just meet people and kind of get some experience. But I feel like once the project is big, they shouldn't be asking you to do free work. You can start at the bottom, but I don't think it should be unpaid.
Tyler, thoughts on this?
I find it kind of suspicious if a company is not willing to pay you, if they're a big enough company where you think at any position, they should be giving you some sort of fee or some sort of per diem. But Darcy's right. If you're working with like fellow students on student films, I mean,
That's different.
yeah, that's different. But if you're being like hired with like a contract and everything for like an actual company, it's kind of, they're not willing to pay you for your time.
Okay. Couple questions from Joan Tipple. What was your most important thing you learned after you graduated from UCI? Like, learn by doing.
Oh, I feel like I'm learning a new lesson every day in this industry. The lesson I have to keep learning, so I'll say this one because I've had to relearn it now countless times, is budgeting my time. Like if somebody comes to you and says, Tyler, here's some drawings. I would love for you to make this scale model for me. How long do you think it would take so I can put it in the budget? And you look at it and you think, it'll take me 2 weeks. Stop. Double it. Like, no matter what, like when you look at an initial project and you're like, I can make that in 2 weeks, no problem. I've been making models my whole life. I have to relearn this lesson countless times. I did a model last year that almost destroyed me because I thought I could make it in a month and it took 5 months. So.
Jeez. Wow. Tyler, any thoughts about
Basically the same thing as learning how to be more efficient and learn how to budget your time. I'm also trying to get better and better at that. But like Darcy said, always double your initial mental calculation of how long it's going to take for you to finish a project, because it really sucks to go back to the person that asked and be like, I know I said I can finish this concept rendering in a day, but it's going to take me 2 with the way things are shaping up. Sorry. And you don't want to ever be in that position where you have to say sorry.
This may be the second half of this, and maybe you're answering it, but the question is, what was your biggest mistake you ever made in your career, and what would you recommend to recent grads? I think tied to that.
You have to be kind to yourself. When you get into this industry, you're kind of scared of all your heroes in a way. Like all the people I would come into a project meeting, I think they just all had it all figured out. They knew everything. Steve Arnold, who's a really, really talented production designer that I worked with on Mindhunter, he said to me, it took him 10 years working as a set designer before he really knew the basics. And that was a kind thing, because you start on your first project and you think, I don't know anything. But then you realize no one really knows anything. We're all figuring it out on each project. And especially as a set designer, you show up and every project is completely different. You have to learn a new architectural style, period, on every show. So yeah, mistakes get made. Hopefully not too big of ones, like, renting $8,000 worth of trophies, for instance. We found the money, we paid for the trophies. I didn't fire Tyler. But even like with the model making, that was a huge mistake. But thankfully it happened in the middle of a pandemic when I literally had nothing else to do. So it didn't get me into any hot water.
Any thoughts,
Like,
Tyler?
the career is kind of still in its infancy, and at this point in time, I think the trophy thing is probably the biggest mistake I've made, like time-wise and cost-wise. But like, if that's like the biggest mistake, maybe there's something I'll look back on in hindsight that I'm doing right now that I'm like, wow, that was a terrible thing to do right now. Maybe working at Knott's was a big mistake. I won't know. I'm still kind of in the beginning of my career, so I'll get back to you in the next alumni panel.
I have to comment on this a little bit because I made a mistake while doing theme park work. I was working for Universal in Japan, and I made a $50,000 mistake. But I could then, because I was, as Tyler and Darcy both said at the beginning, being good to work with, people were willing to sort of give me the benefit of the doubt. And then there was a realization that I'd probably saved them anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 in other ways. So this $50,000 mistake, they kind of went, all right, it's fine. So yeah.
That's another important thing to remember about being nice to people that you work with. When you inevitably screw something up, they're more willing to forgive you, more willing to be like, oh, it's okay, we still like you. It's not like you didn't ruin everything, we'll figure it out. But if you're a person they don't like, you might as well be fired. Get out of here.
Yeah, no, that's very true. The people I like to hire are like family. You can find talented people anywhere, but you have to want to be around the people you work with. And you're right, people will be more forgiving if you're not a jerk.
One more question that just popped in from Joan. What is the most important criteria you look for in hiring a person for a job?
I mean, before I hired Tyler, I took him out to like brunch, and I just kind of wanted to know like what his goals were. And I wanted to meet him and see if his attitude and his disposition would fit in well at Henson, which it did. But yeah, you're looking for the balance of skill set, because I need people that can work really good, really fast is the thing. So I'm always looking for that. That's the most important. And then secondly, is this a person that I could spend 12 hours a day with?
Tyler, are you in that position yet, Ed?
Not yet,
So
but I am looking forward to coming to the next
think?
Design Show West and sort of scoping out who we can potentially take on.
I'll fight you for them.
Yeah.
A joint brunch.
A question from Sarah Martin. Do you have any tips for graduating students on finding PA jobs? Is there specific websites that students can use?
For television, there's a few resources. I'm not sure how often Mandy.com is still used, but that was something when I was first starting. And a lot of that is like the student films, the like little unpaid week, you're only volunteering about a weekend worth of your time. So I feel like that's okay, as long as they're also people on your level. Like Tyler and I said, not a corporation, students just making some art. You'll meet those people, and those are people who will recommend you for PA jobs as they move through. There's also on Facebook, like an I Need Art Department page, and I have utilized that to find PAs before. But make sure you have a website, even if you want to get a job as a PA, because that's the first thing I'm going to ask. Send me your website. I'll take a look at it. And if I don't hear back, I assume they don't have a website. So, but there's some Facebook community art department pages out there that are being used right now.
Great. All right. We have some time left if anybody has any final questions, but I'm not seeing any questions in the list right now. So go ahead and pop something in there if you have something. Otherwise, I really want to thank both Tyler and Darcy. One more time. One more. What opportunities does UCI give grads for network and finding jobs? I think that's more of a question for me, maybe, and maybe Tyler, because he left recently. Well, one within Design Showcase West, which is what Tyler is talking about, is it's done at UCLA every year, and it's designers from all over California that go and show their work, and industry professionals like Darcy come and see what people are doing. A lot of work is found through recommendations from your faculty, that there's a show coming your way and you say this person would be great for it. And that's a lot of times how people start their careers, by getting those shows or those opportunities that come across our desk. And if we know you as a lot of what they've talked about today, as someone that's good to work with, someone that's a talented designer, but someone who's good to work with, someone who's good with technology, but someone who's good to work with, then we're going to recommend those people first. So it really is important to build all those skill sets, but also to be that person that we know that we're not going to get a bad reputation if you send you out in the world. Okay. So I just want to congratulate you once again on the nomination for Excellence in Production Design. When do you find out about that?
Now that the nominations have been announced, it'll be open to the entire Art Directors Guild starting, I think, next week. And there'll be like 3 weeks of voting across all the crafts. Everybody gets to vote in the 8 categories. And then usually there's a big swanky award show, but this year it's, a Zoom meeting. So the award show will be April 11th. And we'll all tune in and cheer on Earth to Ned.
Great. I'm just checking through a few things here. One more question here. It sounds like there are a lot of intangible human factors that lead to the success in the arts. This pandemic has undoubtedly hampered a lot of these opportunities. What strategies are you using to overcome this difficulty?
Yeah, man. I can't stress enough that if you're going into the arts, you should slowly, once possible, work at having a savings account that'll get you through up to half a year of no work, because you just never know what's gonna happen. We were kind of prepping for a writer's strike, so I was okay. It's also not a horrible idea to have a second source of income, be it, like Tyler, you were doing like art commissions, like I make models on the side for fun that I sometimes sell, that when all work goes away, I have something I can like pick up without having to go down and get a job at Starbucks.
I just saw somebody on Instagram with your up model. They didn't claim it was theirs, but they were using it like as part of like their scenic model. I was like, that up model looks familiar.
Well, I sell digital downloads as well, so sometimes people do make them themselves.
I'm going to answer a question asking what network I think EarthNet is on. It's on Disney Plus. What do you envision will happen with the industry relative to the pandemic in the next couple years? More streaming?
I think we're going to have we're entering into a huge boom now of all these projects that like have been sitting around waiting to get started. All of a sudden, everybody's getting calls. So work is starting up right now. So it's great. It's this big boom. I wonder with the streaming industry, though, if we're not going to hit a plateau here soon. There's so many streaming options. I think it's great for another few years. We'll have all the work we can handle. And then I wonder what will be next. I'm not sure. We can't sustain this amount of content. My goodness. Can we?
Any final thoughts from either of you guys? Final advice, final stories, final.
I mean, I'm grateful every day that this is kind of where my career has landed. It was really hard the first years out of grad school with the recession and just not knowing if I had made the right choice entering into a career like this. But since 2014, I would say I have had no regrets, no doubts. I've been having the time of my life, and I feel very lucky to have gotten this connection with Henson. And if I end up designing puppet shows for the rest of my life, how lucky am I, right?
It's fantastic. One of my colleague, Jamie Smith, always asks when we're interviewing people, candidates, what do you do outside of this? And I think of Darcy when I think of what do you do outside of this? You have so many other interests. We run into you. My wife and I run into you in so many different ways. And I think that variety in your background and that interest in everything is what makes you a really interesting person to work with, and probably what contributes to getting you work. It ties into that being a nice person, but it also is how full are our lives, that we can contribute, that we can be a better designer because we go off and do this other thing. So we only have about a minute left. I'm going to look at the chats here. Okay. So yeah, I just want to wrap up by saying thank you so very much for this. It was really wonderful. And I wish you all the luck with the nomination, and Tyler with you at Knott's Berry Farm. And we hope to get back to those places very soon. So yes. All right. I will leave this to the people running this session to wrap things up, but I think we're finished. Thank you so much. Thank you for the everybody who came to the panel, everybody who asked questions. It really helped sort of figure out how we go forward from here. So thank you very much to everybody.
Thanks, guys.